They treat federal immigration authorities different than other law enforcement agents through access restrictions to both property and individual detainees. They discriminate. The liberals discriminate based on the color of your uniform. Unbelievable. Cooperation is barred with respect to serious federal felonies. You can't even cooperate if it's a major crime, including re-entry of convicted aggravated felons. Why would they do this to their own people?
Having those resources on the border right now, on an average day under Biden administration, we had 1,800 gotaways that we knew of, that we counted in 1,800. You know what they were today? 18. So we got that border locked down.
Communist sanctuary mayor Karen Bass out of Los Angeles now getting hit with a lawsuit filed by the United States of America in the District of California, suing the city of LA, Karen Bass, and a bunch of other people in LA, all in their official capacities. All right, court and Karen, you're now sued. In 2024, then candidate President Trump campaigned, and he won the presidential election on a platform of deporting the millions of illegal immigrants that the previous administration, Joe Biden, permitted into our country through its open borders policy to enter unlawfully. Now, days after now President Trump won the November 5th election, the Los Angeles City Council, wishing to thwart the will of the American people regarding deportations, they began the process of codifying their sanctuary city policies. They threw a temper tantrum, okay, just while Joe Biden was handing out gravy to Stacey Abrams, who was just under there, just slurping it up. Have another billion, constantly. To all of them ransacking the treasury on the final days. They were also codifying a sanctuary city policy. Like, oh crap, Trump's gonna come in here, better pass all this stuff immediately. You can see they did that. In fact, they passed an ordinance titled the Prohibition of the Use of City Resources for Federal Immigration Enforcement. They're like, oh crap, dad's home. Put everything away. Signed into law December 9th, 2024, knowing Trump's around the corner. Now, the express purpose of the LA Sanctuary City Law is to thwart immigration and customs enforcement. It's the whole purpose from carrying out their obligations as directed by Congress. The council members who passed this bill have run their mouths and publicly declared as such. In fact, this guy called Hugo Soto Martinez, I wonder what his constituency is made up of, says, we refuse to stand by and let Trump deport, he says, probably American heroes or something, should be citizens, but they're illegal aliens. Now, the United States is currently facing a crisis of illegal immigration. Trump declared a national emergency at the southern border, January 20th, day 1, 2025. And writing, but its efforts to address that crisis are hindered by sanctuary city policies, like what we've got in LA. They refuse to cooperate or share any information at all. Now, the city of LA and their laws are just illegal, what they passed. Those laws and policies are designed to, and in fact do, so they've got a bad purpose and a bad effect, to interfere with and discriminate against the federal government and to stop federal immigration law. All of that in violation of the U.S. Constitution and the Supremacy Clause. Now, the challenged law and the policies of the city of LA, they obstruct the federal government. We need to do our jobs, and they're keeping Americans in harm's way by not allowing us to keep Americans safe. The practical upshot of LA's refusal to cooperate with federal immigration authorities since June 6 has been lawlessness, rioting, looting, vandalism. The situation became so dire that the federal government even deployed California National Guard and Marines to quell the chaos over there. And a direct confrontation with city immigration authorities was the inevitable outcome of the law. Everybody knew this was coming. Mayor of LA, Karen Bass, and their response to that confrontation is blaming ICE. She said, quote, they entered our city and they provoked us in order to carry out federal immigration law. Executing the laws provoking what? The criminals? The illegals? Mayor Bass also claims that ICE has been operating in the city of LA merely as a pretext to federalize the National Guard. LA has sought to do nothing of the sort of prohibiting ICE from operating within city limits, which is directly contrary to the law. Now, the DOJ suing Karen Bass and the city council for this, they write, sanctuary city laws and policies are designed to deliberately impede federal immigration officers and their ability and responsibilities in those locations. The LA Ordinance and other policies, they intentionally discriminate against federal agents. They treat federal immigration authorities different than other law enforcement agents through access restrictions to both property and individual detainees. They discriminate. The liberals discriminate based on the color of your uniform. Unbelievable. By prohibiting contractors and subcontractors wearing the wrong uniforms from providing information, and by disfavoring federal criminal laws that LA has decided not to comply with. The Supremacy Clause of the Constitution, Judge, prohibits LA and Mayor Bass and the City Council from singling out the federal government to be racist and discriminatory against their agents, as the challenged laws and policies do, thereby discriminating, yes, against the federal government. And so accordingly, the law and policies challenged here are invalid and should be enjoined. How dare they judge an agent by how they look if it says ICE right here? Bigots. Versus what? The LA Ordinance and other policies intentionally obstruct the sharing of information envisioned by Congress, and they're impairing federal apprehension and removal of these aliens. And this involves dangerous criminals, and we have to get them out. Now, these obstructionist sanctuary city laws preclude LA officials and law enforcement officials from procuring the arrests, and Congress has said we can do that. Now, the Supremacy Clause prohibits Karen from stopping us, and now she's being sued. We also are suing. The LA City Council sued. We got Marquise Harris Dawson sued, along with the city of LA, all out of LA County. And obviously, we love this beautiful Constitution and quotes from it, writing this very important clause in the Constitution, explaining. The Supremacy Clause of the United States Constitution provides that this Constitution and the laws of the United States, which shall be made in pursuance thereof, shall be the supreme law of the land. Anything in the Constitution or laws of any state to the contrary notwithstanding. Now, under the Supremacy Clause, says Trump to Karen, a state law is preempted if it stands as an obstacle to the accomplishment of the full purposes of the objectives of Congress. A state law is also invalid if it discriminates against the United States or those with whom it deals, or if they think that they can regulate the federal government. That's not how that works. There's a chain of command here. Now, the United States has well-established preemptive authority to regulate immigration. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 4 of the Constitution said Congress has the power to establish a uniform rule of naturalization, saying the government of the United States has broad, undoubted power over the subject of immigration and the status of aliens, not the states. The United States authority to regulate immigration matters derives from the U.S. Constitution. Numerous acts of Congress, binding Supreme Court precedent, lots of support there. Indeed, Congress strengthened that authority this year with the enactment of another bill called the Lake and Riley Act, just passed 2025, which mandates the federal detention of illegal immigrants who are accused of theft, burglary, assaulting an officer, or any crime that causes death or serious bodily injury. Democrats hate it. We have to hold on to them so you can come get them if they beat somebody or burglarize somebody. We have to hold them in our jails. Yes, you do. And if you let them out, we'll go get them at the courts, or we'll go get them at the grocery store. If you don't want to keep them, you should have kept them, and we don't have to go track them down. Accordingly, Congress has the right, writes Trump, to Karen, as it may see fit, to expel aliens of a particular class or to permit them to remain. And Congress has undoubtedly the right to take all proper means to carry out the system which it provides. We have exclusive control over aliens. States don't. And so thus, the federal government has devised an extensive and complex statutory scheme. And we have a whole bunch of rules. We have immigration attorneys, entire courts dedicated to this, all for the governance of immigration and alien status. That was, of course, until Judge Boasberg, Zenas, and Murphy decided they were the new presidential judges of America. Turn those planes around and bring those aliens back. Pause them in the Sudan over there. The scheme codifies the executive's authority to inspect, investigate, arrest, detain, or remove aliens who are suspected of being or found to be unlawfully in the United States. Now, through this scheme, Congress has specified which aliens may be removed. Got a bunch of laws about it. We've read through many of them here in all the litigation. Moreover, Congress has affirmatively outlawed any effort to conceal, harbor, or shield from detection any illegals. Don't hide them and be fraudulent. The immigration laws, if you take them together, they say the executive has authority to manage this affair. Additionally, in consultation with a bunch of other people, this is ours. Now, the immigration law provides for basic principles of cooperation. Got a bunch of codes. U.S. code, this section over here, saying federal authorities must make available investigative resources to states, and states may not restrict information going back. Now, critically, Congress passed the latter provision to fix a specific problem. State and local authorities may not prohibit or in any way restrict any government entity or official from sending to federal immigration agencies information about citizenship or immigration status, right? That's a big one. 1373B. Critically, Congress passed this because certain states and localities were restricting their officials' cooperation with federal immigration authorities. And so Congress said you can't do that anymore. They passed Section 1373. Congress, in doing so, sought to give state and local officials the authority to communicate with the feds. If your local people say you can't talk to us, well, we got the Supremacy Clause. We say you can, so come on over here. Even under the Ninth Circuit improperly narrow interpretation of this provision, they cannot be restricted restricted these officials from sharing a person's legal classification under the law. You know, the city of LA used to not be a dump. It used to cooperate with enforcement of federal immigration law before they got invaded and taken over by the illegals. In 1979, back during a better time, remember when you could walk around San Francisco without stepping in crap all over the place? Beach Boys were still singing. The Office of the Chief of Police in 1979, in fact, he issued a special order requiring LA Police Department detectives to keep an arrest log of the illegals, notify the federal government of the arrests, and forward a daily report listing all the arrests to the federal government. And by the way, that order remains in force. It was back in 1979 that guy did it. It's still in force, but not enforced. In 2017, the California State Legislature, 17, enacted House Bill 54, the California Values Act. Oh, that sounds nice over there. The Office of the Chief of Police for the LAPD in implementing the Values Act of California restricted cooperation with federal immigration authorities because they've got values and the rest of us don't. Have you seen their parades over there in San Francisco or whatever there were these past weekends? Man, some of them on your timeline on X, you gotta be very careful on that. See some California values out there on the streets. In order that the LAPD shall not investigate, interrogate, detain, or arrest a person for civil immigration purposes or inquire into their immigration status. Now, the Chief of Police's guidance requires LAPD personnel to obtain approval from the department's liaison officer before even transferring somebody to ICE custody, right? So a major roadblock, like your guidance says, well, if you're going to give him to ICE, like so let's say this dude has broken into our country 5 times and probably R'd a couple people, maybe M'd a couple people, you know, trafficking in the kids, maybe one of the 300,000 that it came across that they admit came across, like openly admit came across, that they don't know where they're at. They say, we're going to give this person to ICE. Bad dude. We got to get rid of him. We can't charge him for this, but we know he's a bad dude. Sorry, you got to go to the immigration liaison officer, which is probably an illegal alien, who is going to then say, well, do you have probable cause for this? There's only a couple serious felonies that we can keep him for. Other LAPD policies are explained in their FAQ. Question, does the LAPD transfer arrestees to ICE for civil immigration violations? No, the LAPD does not transfer arrestees for civil immigration violations, which is just the nice way of saying that that person has not been charged with a crime for illegal reentry. Does the LAPD extend an arrestee's time in jail based solely on the detainer request? So in other words, if you house this person, let's say this person is under state custody for doing something bad, they get a notice from ICE. Hold on to this person, please. We'll be there on Friday, or there's a bond hearing or something. Will you hold on to him and honor that detainer? Judges, courts, LAPD, no. Under state law, we're prohibited from detaining an individual based on a quote hold or an immigration detainer request, which is curious, right? Then they start freaking out. They're like, well, why are you coming to our neighborhoods? Why are you coming to our place of business? Why are you coming to court? Well, it's because you're not holding these people. If you held them, then we would just get them when you have them in custody. It's not a big deal. Just give them to us. They don't want to do it because they're obstructionists. Question, will the LAPD extend an arrestee's time in custody if we have a warrant? Okay, maybe if it's not just a request, how about a warrant? No. LAPD requires a judicial probable cause determination and a judicial warrant from some Article 3 court, which is not the standard. These are illegal aliens, authorizing an officer to arrest and take into custody the individual for a federal criminal investigation or other crime, right? So like the standard is extremely high. So we're not going to give aliens up to ICE. So ICE has to come get them. And if you're going to obstruct that, then well, you're committing more federal crimes. So now you're being sued. LA's new sanctuary law goes much farther than other sanctuary laws in obstructing immigration operations. They directly undermine the federal government. So on December 9th, after Trump won, they all freaked out everywhere. Stacey Abrams starts getting fatter at the trough. The city of Los Angeles enacted its sanctuary city law titled The Prohibition of Money for Feds. The ordinance was expeditiously processed because they knew Trump was coming and they're like, go, go, go. How fast can you get copies done? At the time, the sanctuary law sponsors explained, they said the following: we refuse to stand back while Donald Trump tries to deport our neighbors, family, friends, co-workers, their entire constituency. More recently, Mayor Karen in LA, who signed the ordinance into law, signaled her desire, right? The intent and the effect of the law, the intent is to thwart federal immigration policy. Said, I want to tell him, says Karen Bass about President Trump, to stop the raids. And peace begins with ICE leaving LA because it's their territory now. This is the Reconquista. We know we have the Claudia Sheinbaum president and the Mexican Senate president saying this is our land, holding maps up into the air on camera. Now, the ordinance prohibits city officials, including law enforcement officers, from participating in federal civil immigration enforcement in a couple of ways. It says no Los Angeles city personnel are authorized to. Wow, and that sounds like it's in direct violation of federal law. Like directly. No personnel are authorized to inquire into or collect information about immigration status. No one. Unless that information is used to provide services to that individual, whatever that means. You also cannot investigate or detain any person for immigration purposes, and you cannot respond to any administrative warrant or any other status requests about a person and for immigration enforcement purposes. So you can't work with the feds basically at all. You can't look into anything, set up policies to do that. You can't investigate, detain if someone else is looking into them, and if they ask for information, can't give that to them either. You cannot give them access to any non-public areas. Don't let them in the building. Make any person in city custody available for ICE. Don't give them to them. Don't let them in the building. Don't let them ask them questions. Do not participate in any ICE operation, joint operation, or joint task force involving immigration. Can't do any of it. LA, direct obstruction of the federal government. Furthermore, the ordinance provides that no city personnel shall provide access to any city data or information that can be used to determine or trace a person's citizenship status either. Now, the ordinance, which prohibits city personnel from sharing status, defines that term capaciously to include everything, all information classification about the person. It also defines immigration agent as individuals engaged in immigration enforcement. It's broad. It covers everything. Thus, cooperation is barred with respect to serious federal felonies. You can't even cooperate if it's a major crime, including re-entry of convicted aggravated felons. Why would they do this to their own people? Is their constituency sympathetic to these people, like aggravated felons? Do they think Trump is calling them aggravated felons? Or is it what Mamdani says, that violence is a social construct? It's very strange. It feels suicidal to me. Like, why would a city want this to happen? Why would city councils be wanting to not cooperate, to allow serious federal felons to not go free? Why is that? Finally, the city council added an urgency clause to the ordinance, which admits that the purpose of the law is to thwart incoming federal administration. They're so dumb. They put the intent of the law is to thwart the incoming Trump administration from carrying out his immigration policies. They say because the city of LA found that Trump's immigration policies will affect the public peace, health, and safety, it decided to limit the city's cooperation with federal immigration enforcement. Now, the city of LA and the city administrator released an employees relations bulletin back recently, June 6, specifying to the heads of the city department, they said the following: if a city facility is not open to the general public, then city personnel should not grant immigration officers entry to that facility unless they've got a judicial warrant or a similar court order. And so they're just saying, nope, we're locking the doors. Our constituents are the illegals, and we're going to protect them against federal enforcement. Now, the city obstruction continued. On June 6, ICE conducted operations to arrest criminal aliens in LA, who they love. Those operations succeeded in apprehending individuals convicted of murder, burglary, domestic violence, offenses of the sexual variety, and violent crimes. Why would any city council member be opposed to those people being arrested? The same day, the response to these arrests of convicted criminals from rioters was throwing rocks and Molotov cocktails at law enforcement, defacing public property, setting cars on fire, defacing buildings, assaulting law enforcement, burning American flags. Oh, that was the peaceful protest, remember, too. On June 7th, Trump, finding that numerous incidents of violence had occurred, deployed the National Guard. They came down. We know what happened. On June 10th, in the midst of these riots and protests, LA City Council member, including Jim and Police Chief Jim McDonnell, was called before the City Council. Rather than encourage closer cooperation with the feds to prevent further unrest, Council member Imelda Padilla, don't know if she has any relation to Senator Jose, asked the chief to undermine federal enforcement actions by warning the City Council of impending raids. McDonnell correctly identified. He said, I can't do that, you crazy lady. That would be obstruction of justice. You want me to warn you of impending ICE raids? Are you nuts? At the same meeting, City Council President Marquise said of the federal immigration officials, said, if we know somebody is coming here to do warrantless abductions of the residents of this city, those are not our partners. partners. I don't care what badge they have on or whose orders they're under. They're not our partners. Got a bunch of insurrectionists there. Furthermore, on June 12th, Mayor Bass responded to the public disturbances by blaming ICE's enforcement of immigration law for the rioting lawlessness. Last Thursday, ICE entered our city and provoked the city by enforcing the law, by chasing people. You mean criminal aliens? Rather than choose to cooperate with the enforcement of federal law, Bass has called for Trump, let the illegals stay and live. Stop the raids, please. Now, the impact of LA's policies are bad. Says that Border Patrol and enforcement in LA is happening. And in particular, we are responsible for enforcing immigration laws at international ports and LA International Airport. Federal law says that ICE and Homeland will be able to inspect all applicants for admission. Now, what LA has done with their city ordinance has gone beyond what controlling precedents have said are permissible. Congress, in fact, expressly prohibited any federal, state, or local entity from prohibiting, right? We read the law specifically, in any way from restricting any official from sending information to the feds. And the ordinance is plainly violating that. It says it prohibits city employees from sending info to the feds. The congressional law says you can't have that. Ordinance from California runs afoul directly of U.S. code. It forbids the LAPD and other law enforcement officers or officials from communicating with ICE or Border Patrol regarding citizenship status. It is exactly the type of information that the court in another case held it could not withhold. The city of LA cannot point to the purported savings clause in the ordinance. The ordinance does not allow this use of city resources, they say. So it's not that they can't do it. It's just that they can't use city resources to do it. So like they have to go get their own printer paper or something and their own stamps to mail it in. Well, if you want all these documents, I guess I got to go mail it myself. And I don't want to come out of pocket for this, and I can't use city resources. So if I can't put it in FedEx, it's a lot of paper and I'm not going to pay for it. Guess you're not going to get the records. Los Angeles has therefore prohibited the activities that federal law expressly requires that will not be restricted. By creating a confusion statutory carve-out for this provision, we know it's just an obstacle. The ordinance, also from California, fails to provide the requisite access that California law requires. Here, it's also violating intergovernmental immunity doctrines too. By prohibiting access to city property, they improperly regulate federal immigration authorities while not regulating others. They can't put regulations on the federal government. They're just a state. Now, additional, in this case, a county, LA. Now, the ordinance is preempted by a federal law. It's actually the city, right? Because it illegally discriminates against federal law and against federal immigration authorities. First, the ordinance prohibits immigration agents from accessing any non-public areas of property. No exceptions, not even for interviews or for criminal investigations at all. Not even California sanctuary statutes go that far. And second, the LA ordinance discriminates against federal law enforcement based on the color of their badge, which I thought liberals wanted more diversity and equity. Apparently not more diversity of federal agents. Favors non-federal authorities and picks and chooses among federal law enforcement authorities. Very bigoted. By prohibiting ICE and Border Patrol, but not other law enforcement. They love like the financial guys. Oh yeah, you're gonna go investigate some big billionaires or something? They love them. From accessing city property and from the interviewing detainees, the ordinance further discriminates against the federal government. And third, the ordinance also discriminates between certain federal criminal laws. It actually requires non-compliance with federal laws, saying that they have no lawful interest in assisting this. What is their basis for this? This was our question. What is their lawful interest in assisting removable aliens in evading federal law enforcement? How is that helping the citizens? What is the argument for that? The city of LA and its officials through the ordinance have singled out the federal government. The ordinance and the policies of LA are an obstacle to our enforcement of federal law, and they're violating the Supremacy Clause. So here's our counts. Count one. Violation of the Supremacy Clause. Your ordinance is in direct contravention to congressional statutes, and it is preempted by the requirements of the congressional law. So federal law preempts, therefore, California LA law. And because your ordinance violates the Supremacy Clause, it is interfering with federal enforcement of immigration rules. Count two. You're also unlawfully regulating the federal government. You're trying to single out federal immigration officials. You can't do that. You're prohibiting law enforcement agencies from complying with valid warrants. And you're also refusing to honor civil detainers and warrants, all of the types that were explicitly authorized by congressional law. So you're violating the Supremacy Clause again. And you're also discriminating against our agents. You're singling out immigration authorities based on the color of their uniforms and the content of their badges. Bigoted. The ordinance ordinance specifically discriminates against ICE by picking and choosing what federal immigration and criminal laws it's going to follow. And the ordinance is specifically targeting ICE in 4 ways. It says no property, says you can't make anybody available to them to talk to, you can't even communicate with them about their status, and other prohibitions. Now, this is discriminatory targeting against ICE agents. For this additional reason, this ordinance violates the Supremacy Clause, and so for these reasons, the Trump DOJ filing another sanctuary city lawsuit against another sanctuary city, perhaps the behemoth of them all, maybe the final boss of the game. I don't know. Is New York the final boss or is LA? It's probably LA. We'll see. Now, we'll come back on this one, but the lawsuit has been filed, and so it is now going to go to court, and we'll see what the city does. It would be very nice if they complied. I'm sure their constituents, not the illegals, would be very happy to know that they're working with ICE to get rid of serious felons, at least. They won't even do that. Tom Homan was also out today talking about a lot of this immigration stuff. Here's a little bit of Tom out and about at the White House.
Hotel workers. I mean, is there a plan to go after them later?
I'm not going to get ahead of the president on that. I know they're discussing that. I'm part of those discussions, but I'm not going to get ahead of the president. We'll see what they come up with.
Last week, arrested 11 Iranians passed through border during Biden administration. One of them was a sniper for Iranian army. The other one was, while he was arrested, he had firearms on him. Given the fact that the Iranian American community are feeling threatened by the regime from Iran, can you confirm that there will be further crackdown on illegal Iranians who've passed the border during Biden administration?
Well, so far, there's over 200 arrests of Iranian nationals. And again, President Trump committed from day one, the priority is going to be public safety threats and national security threats. So we've been on this since January 20th. We didn't wait for the Iran conflict to happen. We've been working this, but we put our foot on the gas after what happened in Iran a couple weeks ago. We're going to identify the national security threats. It's just not ICE, it's FBI, it's the Department of Justice and the intelligence community. We're focusing on national security threats, not just Iranians and others. And that's exactly what we're doing. We're keeping President Trump's promise. That's what we were prioritizing.
There's widespread fear among...
If you're in the country legally, you should be concerned. It's not okay to be in the country illegally. If you're a national security threat, you should be working. We're looking for you.
Yeah. There's widespread fear among Iranian Americans that some sleeper cells have moved into the United States during the Biden administration. What do you know about these so-called sleeper cells?
All Americans should be concerned about sleeper cells. Look, under the Biden administration, you opened the border. We got over 2 million known gotaways. That's not a guess. Over 2 million people we know based on video, drone traffic, sensor traffic, cross the border. They paid more to get away. We know who they are, where they came from, where they are now, why they're here, right? So why do 2 million people pay more to get away? You pay the cartel amount of money to get to the border, turn yourself in a green uniform, right? Or you pay more to get to New York, Chicago, and not be arrested. Why? Why didn't they pay less to get a free airline ticket to the city of their choice, a free hotel room, 3 meals a day, free medical care, and work authorization in a few months? Why did 2 million people not take advantage of the free giveaway program, pay more to get away? Because they didn't want to be vetted, they didn't want to be fingerprinted. They could be the ones that are trafficking in fentanyl, they could be ones trafficking women and children, and they could be national security threats. I said from day one, the Biden administration, I said for 4 years while he was president, when they opened the border up, they created the biggest national security vulnerability we've ever seen. And that's just a fact, and we're seeing it play out.
There's a fatwa issued by 2 of the Iranian ayatollahs against President Trump, citing that if he attacks the supreme leader of Iran, it would be halal for Shiite followers to kill him, to assassinate him. Are you aware of that fatwa, and what's your response to it?
Look, it's a little out of my lane, but we got the strongest president in history of this country in office right now, so I don't think that worked out very well for him.
So there are Marines stationed right now in the San Diego area helping with border protection. If encounters have dropped as dramatically as we know that we've seen the numbers drop, why is it necessary for a Marine presence to be there near the San Diego border?
Because it's a national security issue right now. I think we all recognize the national security temperature right now is at a high level. We're going to take every opportunity we can to secure that border and make sure we don't do what Biden administration did and let the gotaways. Then they give you, for example, having those resources on the border right now, on an average day under Biden administration, we had 1,800 gotaways that we knew of, that we counted in 1,800. You know what they were today? 18. So we got that border locked down.
So then why is it necessary for the Marine presence to be there in addition to the regular border?
So there's less gotaways. The more resources we have, the more people we stop and come in the country. Especially right now during national security, the vulnerability we have right now with Iran and other countries, I'd rather have too many resources than not enough. Because once you make that mistake, there's no going back.
Can you talk about that a little bit further in light of the July 4th holiday and what security threats are being watched right now, concerns about sleeper cells or other things that have been in the
Like the DHS put out a threat assessment 2 weeks ago, I agree with that. We are in heightened alert status right now, so every American needs to keep their eye open. Again, there's several places to report suspicious activity. You go to the DHS hotline and report it there. But look, today we have the most secure border in the history of this nation. You can have some comfort of that. But the reason we have the most secure border in the history of this nation is because of President Trump's policy and having DOD assets assist Border Patrol on the border. That's why we have that most secure border, which is why we need the big, beautiful bill passed, because that puts more Border Patrol agents on the border, maybe relieve DOD assets. That puts more ICE agents on the streets of this country to arrest more public safety threats and national security threats. I looked at numbers this morning. Over 200 Iranian nationals have been arrested by ICE and brought in. With more resources, we do more than national security work across the country. But right now, we got well over 20 million illegal aliens in this country. We got less than 5,000 deportation officers. We need the bill to get more agents on the street. We need more detention beds, because everybody arrested needs to be a bed before they get removed. And more contract work, so badges and guns who have immigration authority aren't sitting at a desk doing keystroke on some administrative duty that can be done by contract to put that badge and gun on the street to look for these national security threats. Big, beautiful bill is important. We need that passed right away.
Quick question for you. There are reports of a 75-year-old Cuban national who died in ICE custody. He had lived in the United States for 60 years. He was being held in ICE detention in Florida. Is there anything you can tell us about that? There's still not a lot of information, how he died.
I'm unaware of that. I mean, people die in ICE custody. People die in county jails. People die in state prisons. I mean, if you look at, when I was ICE director and we drilled down that,
Fannie Willis
the question
jails.
should be how many lives does ICE save? Because when they go in detention, we find many with diseases and stuff that we deal with right away to prevent death. So
Fannie
I'm not
Willis,
aware of the
bed
specific
bugs.
case, but I'll say this. People can argue with me all they want, but the facts are the facts. I think the politicians in New Jersey found this out, that we have the highest detention standards in the industry. I'll compare an ICE detention facility against any state prison, against any federal facility. I'll go head to head with any of them.
Go to Big Fannies.
You go to ice.gov and look at our detention standards. It's the highest detention standards in the industry at a very expensive cost to the taxpayers. So, people say, oh, the detention standards are horrendous. Go look for yourself, then come back and talk to me. I mean, when we talked about the facility that the congressman tried to get into up in New Jersey, Delaney Hall, once they got in there, what did they find out? Detention standards are outstanding. Probably the cleanest facility in that entire state. Again, I'll put our detention standards against anybody.
When the big, beautiful bill does pass, how do you expect that to impact the number of deportations per day? Will it be twofold, threefold?
Vastly increased. Depends how quick we get more resources on, how quick we get the contractors on, how quick we bring the
those
beds
numbers
on.
up.
I mean, Governor DeSantis, I give him credit. We got the facility he's putting up in Florida. We'll be filling those beds as quick as we can because we
Trump's
need more
going there
beds.
tomorrow, too.
I mean, I looked at this morning. I think we got like 1,700 empty beds. We'll fill them in 2 days. So we need more beds. That bill is going to let us sign contracts that are pending for more beds. We don't have the funding to do it. Once that bill passes and the money comes to the Department of Homeland Security, we can sign some of those contracts and get more beds right away.
Yeah. All right, Tom
deployment, sir?
Homan. So good stuff there. Lots of Tom Homan, and we're happy that he's out there talking to the media, explaining what's happening next. He mentioned Alligator Alcatraz is the name, which is also good. Says here from another post from Eric Dougherty, shared this one. Ron DeSantis was out giving us a tour of what's coming up in Alligator Alcatraz.
No problem. But all the stuff that goes into intake and processing of illegals, you're seeing this put up. This is all 24 hours. 24 hours from now, you're going to see even more. And by Tuesday, this will be able to have intake of illegals.
And you've thought of everything. Okay, so there are 4 gigantic tents. Let's come on over here, Governor. And people are thinking, okay, you're in the middle of the Everglades. It's hot. That would explain why you've got this bank of air conditioners here.
Yeah, so I mean, this is going to be, illegals will come in, they'll be processed, there'll be places for them to be housed, you'll have an ability for food, you'll have an ability for them to consult legal rights if they have that, because there is a process that's involved with this. So this is really everything. This is going to be a self-contained little area. And then, of course, you also have stuff for the staff that work here. So we've got laundry facilities, we've got showers, we've got, obviously, there you see the shower and bath facilities.
Yeah, right there.
Yep.
Where do you go to get a bunch of bathrooms like that?
Well, so this is being done by the Division of Emergency Management. So when we have a hurricane, like we would actually have people stage here for hurricane response normally anyways, but we have it when we have all the linemen come in to do the power.
Sure.
We have to set up little areas for them. And so you have all this type of stuff. So this is not our first rodeo. The detainee illegal alien mission's a little bit different, and the deportations, but logistics, we know how to do that.
Right, and
all right, so Alligator Alcatraz happening there in Florida. We've got Pam Bondi, the Trump DOJ, suing the communist mayor Bass in LA to end the sanctuary policies, which are in the law directly opposed to the federal government law. And we'll see what the California judges do with that one. So, my friends, we'll keep our eye on this one. Thanks for subscribing and joining as we do.